meeting. I'd like to call to order the Education Committee for January 11th, 2022. First task this evening is A, approval of the minutes. Recommended action, approval of the November 9th, 2021 Education Committee minutes. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second? Mary, can you hear us? Second. Yeah, let's take a minute to try to get.
Her thing was yellow, like I think she's trying to talk.
We couldn't hear her?
I don't think so. She's not on mute.
Is there somebody in technology that can help her?
You have to try again.
Okay, because we're going to have a presentation. But let's call for the vote. So, should we call for the vote? Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Mary. Glad you're here. Okay, presentations. A curriculum update, Jason Palaya. Or someone on the behalf of the group.
Thank you, Lynn. We appreciate you being here tonight.
Yep.
I'd like to take a moment to thank you, our board of school directors, for giving me the opportunity to share this evening an update and some additional information regarding our core program evaluation process.
So you point the microphone to her.
Next. Next, please.
Are we good with the slides? Thank you.
You will recall from previous presentations provided by Cassandra Jones and Jason Palaya that we are currently piloting 2 different ELA core programs in grades K through 7. And as you can see on the slide, in K through 5, we have Open Court Reading and Amplify CKLA. In grades 6 and 7, Amplify ELA and Wit and Wisdom. This visual details the timeline for the core program evaluation and selection process. As you can see, there are several critical tasks that were initiated in December and will continue through January. So at the uppermost left box, we're going to talk about what's really happening right now. This work must be completed prior to the submittal of a recommendation to the board for adoption of new core resources. So this work is in progress. Part of the work that we're conducting right now is the audit process. This is a 2-pronged approach that includes both alignment to standards and alignment to research. We're pleased to share also that we have approximately 20 additional teachers who have signed on to pilot 1 unit of either CKLA or Open Court. And we're grateful for the efforts of these teachers. Their insight, along with the experience and knowledge shared by our current pilot teachers, will support our program selection process. The feedback is going to be a key element of our selection. Working our way through that same box, you can see in addition that our winter benchmarks are now underway, and they will be completed by the first week of February. We will then analyze the data provided by multiple assessments. Also, preliminary quotes will be obtained in February. As we look ahead, some of the next steps will focus on data analysis of those assessments, program selection, and then recommendation to the board. And you can see that's happening in the February timeframe. Future activities will be aimed at procurement of materials, training, and development of curricular documents. And that will be happening beginning in March through May, and then training will continue all the way into August. Next slide, please.
Wait, I have a question on
Oh,
this.
sure.
Oh, can we go back?
Uh-huh.
So when you were saying you're analyzing the benchmark data, are you going to be looking at the benchmark data as it relates to the different programs?
Yes. We will be looking across programs.
Everybody.
Yep, that's right. And we have a few more details coming up as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So as I mentioned, we are using a multi-pronged approach to this evaluation and selection process. This slide reflects all of the factors that will contribute to our approach. The approach is comprehensive, and following slides will provide more supporting details. But as you look here, you see we're talking about alignment to research, alignment to our core standards, third-party and independent reviews. We're considering that the programs include supports for all learners. The degree of professional development is key. We will have stakeholder feedback and experiences to consider, program effectiveness, which will come from some of our data analysis, and then of course cost. So to begin, when we talk about alignment to research, the Reading Lead curriculum evaluation tool is something that will be utilized, and there is a document, a supporting document that shows quite a comprehensive list of components that are being recognized with either green flags or red flags in order for us to evaluate the tool. Okay, on the next slide now we're talking about alignment. So first we're going to look at alignment to the PA core standards. We have a document that we're using, again, it's a supporting document in your package. The one that we have is an example for grade 5. And during the process that we're working through now, we will ensure that there are units that are present in these pilot programs that are aligned to address all of the PA core standards in English language arts. Next slide, please. Continuing on, when choosing the programs to pilot, we considered independent evaluations from several sources, including federal, state, and nonprofit organizations. We chose programs that were highly rated. We have continued to review evaluations as they are published. Ed Reports is an independent nonprofit organization that recently evaluated open court and units of study. These evaluations are included in your board packets as well, and as well as the rebuttals from the publishers. In summary, open court did not score as high as Amplify CKLA, but did perform better than our current program, units of study. Another key aspect of our process is ensuring that we have support for all learners. And I'd really like to highlight selection criteria that would include support for our English language learners, struggling students, as well as students that are in need of enrichment. A key part of this is using universal design for learning. And this structure provides flexibility in instruction and assessment for students. Of course, professional development will be so important moving forward. Opportunities for professional development will be key in support of a successful implementation of a new core program. And we recognize that the professional development must be extended to both teachers and administrators, and a variety of resources will be available. So this slide speaks to a little bit about what that might look like. As I said, that would begin shortly after adoption of the program. Stakeholder feedback is also a valued and integral part of our selection process. As you can see, we're nearing a date right here, January 17th. Where the pilot teachers, the principals, and parents of students in the formal pilot classrooms will receive a survey. The survey will be collected, and then data will be compiled and also available for public review in February. Determining program effectiveness, again, another one of the key aspects of the multi-pronged approach. And so these are probably names that you've seen earlier this year. We have new programs and new sources of data that we're using to quantify our student achievement. The first tool, Acadience, is a universal screener, and we use that in grades K through 7 for reading. In your board packet, there are some documents that reflect different types of reports that we'll be able to analyze from Acadience. The first is the Pathways of Progress report. That will measure growth and improvement over time. The second report, the Effectiveness of Instructional Support Levels by Class. Also, there's a sample in your packet. And this is going to help us determine the health of effective instruction in each classroom. And what we find from Acadience is we're able to quantify students and identify students who are likely to need continuing core support, students that are likely to need strategic support, and also students who are likely to need intensive support. The second, also we have additional data coming from a new tool we're using this year, MAP. The class report and an achievement status and growth summary will be available. You have samples in your board packets as well. And this will help us to make sure that our students are moving at the rate at which is expected. We can look at, are adjustments needed as we work through the different benchmarks in the fall, winter, and spring. And it will help us project, what students do we expect to make growth with the core, and what also do we need to provide in terms of strategic or intensive supports. Next slide, please. All right, this takes us to, of course, the sort of the bottom line also, which would be cost. We have to consider the initial cost, which would include procurement of all of the materials. So for instance, that would include teacher resources that we need, and also professional development and coaching. We did mention that that's a very important part of this process. So we will be looking closely to see what's offered by the programs and the cost. And then on an ongoing basis, there may be consumables aligned to programs, annual licensing, and again, ongoing professional development and coaching. Does anyone have any questions or any answer?
So for those of us we've said once and I'll say it again, that we're able to do this with getting new curriculum and new reading materials because of our ESSER funds. Mm-hmm. This is coming out of the regular budget, this is coming out of that budget, and then there's a timeline, right?
That's right.
A timeline, or a window in which we have to pilot, procure, train, and roll out.
That's right, and the process has been moving well this year. There are lots of parts here. You can see it's a lot of moving parts. Cassandra Jones and Jason have been leading the effort. Ms. Messenger and I are supporting, but we think that we're very pleased with what we've seen so far. We're grateful, as I said, to the teachers for participating because they're key elements, and we're really looking forward to the next steps of the data analysis because that will also, prove what we hope to see out of these programs.
Any other questions? Any other questions from my committee members? Good, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, moving on to agenda items. A, 2022-2023 school year calendar revised. The reason for the revision is that there was some adjustments to the calendar because of a day off, and we needed to move a couple days around. So, do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Call for the vote?
Yes.
Yes.
And yes. B, course selection guide, 8th grade revised. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the 8th grade course selection guide for the 2022-2023 school year as presented. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Call for the vote? Yes.
Yes.
C, Course Selection Guide, 9th to 12th grade revised. Recommended action, that the Board of School Directors approve the 9th to 12th grade course selection guide for the 2022-2023 school year as presented. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Call for the vote?
Yes.
Yes.
And yes. D, student-teacher placement changes. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the student-teacher placement changes as presented. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Call for the vote?
Yes.
Yes.
And yes. Student-teacher placements. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the student-teacher placements as presented. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Call for the vote?
Yes.
Yes.
And yes. G, out-of-state field trip request, Cash Ski Club. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the out-of-state field trip request as presented. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Move. Second.
Call for the vote?
Yes.
Yes.
And yes. I've been informed that I missed a letter. F, reading practicum placements. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the placement of 14 reading practicum students from Westchester University with the Codesville Area School District elementary teachers as presented. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
This is actually a very good thing. We're going to have these extra hands helping us with reading from January 22 through May 2022. Call for the vote?
Yes.
Yes.
And yes. Request for permission to do research, Nicole Stauffer. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the request from Nicole Stauffer to engage in a research study as a requirement in completing her Master's of Education degree at Westchester University as presented. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Call for the vote?
Yes.
Yes.
And yes. I, Learn Well Academic Service Agreement. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the agreement for the provision of academic services within a medical facility for student 1-0020143 as presented. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Call for the vote?
Yes.
Yes.
And yes. J, proposed adjudication student 1-0006283. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the proposed student adjudication for student 1-0006283. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Call for the vote?
Yes.
Yes.
And yes. K, proposed adjudication student 1-0005775. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the proposed student adjudication for student 1-0005775. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Call for the vote?
Yes.
Yes.
And yes. L, proposed adjudication, student 1-0007180. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the proposed student adjudication for student 1-0007180. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Call for the vote?
Yes.
Yes.
And yes. And proposed adjudication, student 1-0006022. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the proposed student adjudication for student 1006022. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Call for the vote?
Yes.
Yes.
And yes. N, settlement agreement, student 1002237. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the confidential settlement agreement for student 1002237. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Call for the vote?
Yes.
Yes.
And yes. O, settlement agreement, student 1001430. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the confidential settlement agreement for student 1001430. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Call for the vote?
Yes.
Yes.
And yes. For informational items, the enrollment reports are included. We have some new business here. Correct?
You do. So if I go back to an informational item, Ms. Mills, I think it's important to note that we continue the trend of seeing additional students back in the district. And so in this month's report, you see an additional 133 students compared to a year ago in the district, an additional 133, which is great news. We'd like to see many more come back. We think that everything we heard this evening is what's going to help bring young people back. And we've actually seen a reduction in the number of students from our district who are attending charters by 86. So we're beginning to see, we're holding steady to those numbers that we've been seeing since the summer. So wanted to call that out. Under new business, one of the conversations, just a conversation that we're having here as a leadership team with our principals with regard to what the high school summer experience will look like. And we just want folks to be aware that we are taking a look at the notion of a sliding scale with regard to potentially asking for tuition. And there are a couple of reasons for that, and later on this evening we'll do a presentation to the policy committee sort of speaking to promotion standards and the types of things that we need to be doing as a district so that our students continue to take their education very seriously. And this is one area that we think we want to take a look at and have a conversation about. But we wanted to sort of put a pin in it for January so that folks are aware. We're going to be very clear about that and then what that means down the line. Certainly we do not know how many students would be in need of summer because we'd have to take a look at what report card grades would look like and who would need that service. But it's something that we would like to look at as an organization. We'll certainly bring a recommendation back to the board when the time is right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Was there any public comment?
Lori Shannon Bailey. Wait, this is policy committee.
Oh, hi.
That's okay. Lori Shannon Bailey.
Good evening. Thank you very much. A couple of months ago, I had asked about the students that are being adjudicated, specifically whether or not these students are being supported by the community program entitled PAC 19320. If they aren't, I think this is a great opportunity for the community to connect and provide additional support systems. So I'd like an answer on that information, please, at some point.
I can share with you that I've been part of the PAC 19320
I recall.
conversations, and it's been a conversation that we've been having. One of the areas that came up in PAC 19320 was the notion of surveying students. And one of the things that the group wanted to ensure it did is it surveyed all students, including students who would have experienced gone through the adjudication process, so we get a full picture of like why is it that things happen and what might we be able to do differently as a community to support young people. So those conversations are still in place, and in fact the PAC 19320 has yet to put the final report out. I think we're meeting in the next couple of weeks to see what that looks like. So I look forward to what that looks like and how we might be able to provide support to young people. I actually thought it was a really important thing that they do, that we look at, a breadth of young students, a wide variety of students who could tell us, what their experiences were, whether they were absolutely fantastic or what types of things might need to look different to improve their experience.
Thank you very much. According to an announcement that Chief Lawford made last night, who is the chief of the Codesville City Police Department, the next PAC meeting is this coming Wednesday night. I didn't get the time. But I'm happy to hear that. There are a lot of community resources and a lot of people who are compassionate about helping these youth, so thank you very much for that update. In terms of the presentation that we heard on reading, and it sounds exciting, what is being done to help the reading skills for the older students? I've advocated for 10th graders who are reading and doing math on a 4th and 3rd grade level. I think that's absurd. So I'd like to know, moving forward, what are you doing to make sure these students are ready to, are prepared to pass state assessments, and also to make sure they're reading on grade level upon graduation?
Happy to respond to that. In fact, as we continue to engage in the work in K-6 and learning what the data teams are teaching us, the MTSS program is something that we're going to have to do next year with regard to our students, to be sure that we identify intervention periods so that they can go outside of their classes to other classes to receive the supports that they need. So that's something that we are constantly doing. I know that Mr. Maloney and Ms. Snyder are working diligently along with the team to determine what that's going to look like. It's going to take a yeoman's effort with regard to scheduling and staffing to do that. But it's something that we absolutely have to do, because yes, we're focusing on every single child, and that issue that you raised is one that's important for us to deal with.
Okay, and I'd like to know how many reading specialists the district has, and specifically, are they working with the secondary students as well? That's some information that I'd like to know. And I will pause now out of respect, but you did take up a lot of my time in terms of responding, and I appreciate that.
And it was not by design.
It's fine. It's information that I think the public is also interested in. So thank you very much.
And as you said, well, I know the adjudications are important. I would like you to know that within the next, if not the next meeting, very soon, we're going to have a broader presentation on adjudication so that the public is aware of what the process is and what it is that staffs do, students do, and what kind of services young people receive as a result of the adjudication process. We think everyone should be aware and have accurate information with regard to that process.
Absolutely. When you don't tell us what your processes are, we have conversations in our head, and we start to think about things. And sometimes we answer things based on the information in our head. So thank you very much.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Our next meeting is Tuesday, February 8th, 2022, and I adjourn the Education Committee at 6:30.
Thank you, Ms. Mills. I'd like to call to order the Finance Committee meeting. First order of business is the approval of the minutes. Recommended action that the board approves the November 9th, 2021 Finance Committee meeting minutes. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
I'll second. And if we can call for a vote?
Yes?
Yes?
Same.
All right. First up, we have a presentation from Mr. Hannon and Ms. Diefendorfer on the budget.
Yes, we do. Thank you, Ms. Diefendorfer. Thank you, Mr. Finbonner. Good evening, school board directors and our members of the community. Tonight, we're going to give you a brief update on our budget for the 22-23 school year. As we previously shared, this slide lays out our roadmap for developing our budget. Step 1 is to project the number of students. This step was completed and shared at our committee meeting in November. Step 2, determine personnel requirements. We are looking to complete this step by the end of February. Step 3, estimate expenditures. We are working on developing our estimated expenditures. What is that we'll spend? Step 4, estimated revenues, and we're also working on developing our estimated revenues to see what we're going to bring into the district to provide supports for our budget. Step 5 will be to balance the budget. All of these steps will be necessary as we find ways to balance our budget. As previously mentioned, the second step in our budget roadmap is personnel. We will be conducting meetings in February to make sure we have the proper staffing in place to meet the instructional and operational needs of the district. This would include instructional staff, instructional support staff, school-level administrative, clerical, custodial, and food service staff, district-level administrative, supervisory, and clerical staff. And that process actually started in January as students are taking a look at the course catalogs to see what courses it is that they want to select. That will then get us in a place to figure out what does that mean from a staffing perspective, speak with principals about that, to then provide to Ms. Diefendorfer and her team what those numbers look like so that the budget can shake out. Ms. Diefendorfer.
Thank you, Mr. Hanna. Next to the budget roadmap is to estimate our expenditures. These are very high-level preliminary expense projections for 22-23. These numbers will change throughout our budgeting process as more information becomes available. Currently, we are projecting salaries and benefits to be approximately $71.1 million, support of other schools, which are your charters, OTECs, and approved private schools, to be approximately $67 million. Transportation is approximately $9.2 million. Special education costs at approximately $16.1 million. Other spending, which includes areas such as facilities, technology, our building budgets, and athletics, is projected around $13.7 million. And debt and legal is approximately $17.9 million. Next is to estimate our revenues. These are also preliminary revenue projections for 22-23 based on our funding sources. These numbers will also change throughout our budgeting process as more information becomes available. We have projected our local revenues to be approximately $126.4 million, and this is based on our current millage rate of 39.691. We have projected state revenues to come in around the same level as last year at approximately $54 million, and federal revenues to come in around $5.6 million. Based on our preliminary numbers, we have a budget gap of about $9 million that we need to close in order to balance our budget. Balancing our budget is the last major step in completing the budget roadmap for 22-23. With an approximate $9 million budget gap, we have a long, hard road ahead of us in order to balance our budget. This includes tax increases and the potential need for cuts to take into consideration. Mr. Hanna?
This is the current millage rate, and we know based on the Act 1 adjusted index, it can possibly go up between 0% and 4.4%. This budget timeline reflects upcoming key dates. We are recommending that the board use a time frame that stays within the Act 1 index of 4.4%. The board would need to adopt a resolution at the next board meeting indicated they will stay within the index for the 22-23 school year based on this recommendation. Next, we will share what we have spent to date using the CARES Act, ESSER's grant funds. The grant amount is $1,346,239. What we've spent to date is $1,329,473, and we have a remaining balance of $16,766. The various categories of expenses include salaries and benefits, BVA tuition. BVA is what we were using previously for our cyber work through the IU. Supplies, technology, software, An equitable share for our non-public schools. In this case, during this CARES grant, our non-pubs receive a share of this. Instructional staff development, communication services, professional administrative services, nursing, and facilities-related costs. Next, we will share what we spent today using the CRRSA Act, and there will be a glossary at the end of this, folks. The ESSER's 2 grant funds. The grant amount in this case is $6,915,330, and to date, we've spent $2,794,612 and have a remaining balance of $4,120,718. The various categories of expenses in this case include salaries and benefits, instructional services, supplies, technology and software, instructional staff development, health supplies, facilities-related costs, transportation services that support our summer work, Chromebook-related expenses. We will provide additional details in the months to come. The acronyms: CARES, the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act; ESSER, Elementary and Secondary Emergency Relief; and CRRSA, Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations. This slide obviously presents what all of the acronyms stand for.
Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Diefenderfer. Mr. Hanna. I've seen on social media, I've been asked questions relating to ESSERs. It seems like a common theme in our community, and rightfully so. There was a lot of money that was given to our district. Can you take a minute to explain, because some people may look at that presentation and see ESSERs 1 and ESSERs 2 and say, well, that doesn't add up to what we were supposed to get. Can one of the two of you explain a little bit more in depth on the breakout of the ESSERs allotments, the CRRSA, just to explain to our community kind of how it's allocated at a high level? It doesn't have to be too in-depth.
Sure, yeah, so we basically, it has to relate to anything related to COVID. So it can go back to March of 2020 when the coronavirus had, became the pandemic. And we used it for support in order to social distance, for professional development, for areas where without the aid of, these grants, we probably would not be able to service the education and support of students. So even though it says that there are balances remaining, those balances are accounted for, and they will continue to be accounted for in the categories that are listed on each of these slides for the first grant and the second grant.
Thank you, Ms. Diefenderfer. And the remaining ESSERS money that has been allocated to the district is still in process, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, just wanted to make sure we...
Yes, there is a third grant that is still in the works that we are working through how we're going to allocate that, and that will be shared publicly as well.
Okay, thank you. Just for anybody that's doing quick math and saying, well, this is how much you got, this is what you had out there, so I appreciate that. Anybody else have any other questions? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item A, financial statements. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the financial statements, bills payables list as presented. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
I'll second. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote.
Yes.
Yes. Letter B, 2022-2023 budget resolution. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the 2022-2023 budget resolution option B to stay within the 4.4% Act 1 index for budget as presented. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Letter C, Codesville Youth Initiative, revised outreach and referral services contract. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve a revised contract with Codesville Youth Initiative, CYI, to provide outreach and referral services to students and families identified as homeless by the district at a cost not to exceed $80,100 from January 18, 2022 through September 30th, 2024. The district plans to allocate a portion of American Rescue Plan Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief, Homeless Children and Youth, ARP, and HCY, to funds through the partnership with CYI as presented. Do we have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Letter D, Event Central Rental and Sales Chair Rental for Graduation. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the proposal from Event Central Rental and Sales to rent 1,200 folding chairs at a total cost of $3,370 for the Codesville area senior high school graduation ceremony. The Chester County Technical College High School, TCHS, has agreed to pay the increased cost of the chair rental fee, which will be calculated if it applies to use the facilities as presented. Do we have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Letter E, Burke 1 proposal for 2022 Act 80 comparison services. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the proposal and quote from Burke 1 to provide 2022 Act 80 comparison services for the school district at a cost of $903.30 plus postage as presented. Do we have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Letter F, Jason Pillai out-of-district training request. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve a request from Jason Pillai, Director of Educational Services, to attend the Pennsylvania Department of Education Data Summit in Hershey, Pennsylvania on March 20th through the 23rd of 2022 at an estimated cost of $755 as presented. Do we have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Any questions or comments? We'll call for a vote.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Letter G, Carrie Ambrose, out-of-district training request. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve a request from Karen Ambrose, Purchasing Coordinator, to attend the Pennsylvania Association of School Business Officials, PASBO, Annual Conference in Hershey, Pennsylvania on March 8th through the 11th, 2022 at an estimated cost of $920 as presented. Do we have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Letter H, Edward A. Persternick Tax Collector Agreement. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the Tax Collector Compensation Selection Agreement with Edward A. Persternick, elected tax collector for West Brandywine Township. The agreement shall be in effect for 4 years from January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2025 as presented. Do we have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Letter I, Delaware Museum of Natural History grant-funded program. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors ratify a $2,250 grant from the Delaware Museum of Natural History to provide 18 educational programs for students at Callan Elementary School in January at no cost to the school as presented. Do we have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Letter J, Rotary Club of Codesville, donation of dictionaries. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the donation of dictionaries worth a total of $840 from the Rotary Club of Codesville to be distributed to all third graders at East Fallowfield, Kings Highway, Rainbow, and Reeseville Elementary Schools as presented. Do we have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Any questions or comments? So thank you for the donation. And we'll call for a vote.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Letter K, Life Touch National School Studios commission checks. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve commission checks from Life Touch National School Studios for a total of $1,206.50 to Rainbow Elementary School and for a total of $640.28 to East Fallowfield Elementary School for the Fall Individuals 2021-2022 program as presented. Do we have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Letter L, Exelon program donation. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve a $500 donation from Exelon Foundation to provide funds for the Bridge Club at Codesville Area Senior High School as presented. Do we have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Any questions or comments? Thank you for the donation. We'll call for a vote.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Letter M, Ohio Pile Prince quarterly royalty check. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors accept a quarterly royalty check from Ohio Pile Prints Incorporated in the amount of $181.15 based on the sale of spiritware sold at local retailers as presented. Do we have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Letter N, Codesville Area Intermediate High School Spotlight Organization gift card donations. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors accept a donation of 15 gift cards in $5 increments worth a total of $75 from the Codesville Area Intermediate High School Spotlight Organization to be used as positive behavioral interventions and supports, PBIS, rewards for students as presented. Do we have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Letter O, giant donation for gingerbread project. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors ratify the donation of supplies worth $50 from the Thorndale Giant Store to Callan Elementary School for the 2nd grade's gingerbread house project as presented. Do we have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Any questions or comments? Thank you for the donation, and we'll call for a vote.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Letter P, Joshua Peckin, Eagle Scout project donation. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the Eagle Scout service project proposed by Joshua Peckin to donate a total of approximately 200 whisper phones to Callan, East Fallowfield, Rainbow, and Reesville Elementary Schools for students who struggle with reading and speaking as presented. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Any questions or comments? Thank you, Joshua, for the donation, and we'll call for a vote.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Letter Q, Rebecca Vitri, Administrator, additional salary. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the part-time position of curriculum writer through Flux Space for Fork Farms for Rebecca Vitri for the 2021-2022 fiscal year as presented. Do we have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Letter R, Release and Settlement Agreement, Employee 13279. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the confident release and settlement agreement for Employee 13279 as presented. Do we have a motion?
Motion. Second.
And we'll call for a vote.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Letter S, Human Resources Report. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the resignations, appointments, new positions, leave of absence, transfers, change of status, and corrections as presented. Do we have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. I see no informational items. Do we have any old business? Any new business? And public comment? Lori Shannon.
Thank you. Good evening. I understand, I think I heard the debt and legal amount was $17.9 million. Is that from like last year and this year?
No, if you recall, we've been saying that our debt service unit was going to be going up by $9.3 million, so that's incorporating that new increase in our debt service payment.
Okay, does it include the $4.5 million that we found out we would have to pay Collegium and?
No, that would not be included.
Okay.
That's correct.
Dang, that's an awful lot of money. Andrew, a couple of meetings ago, you mentioned that our numbers for the charter schools would likely increase moving forward. It sounds like you may have been wrong based on what you announced earlier in terms of students returning. Are you seriously predicting that we'll continue to lose students, or?
No, I think we'll continue on the path that we've gone over the course of the last year and a half, where we'll see a continuous increase in our student enrollment and a decrease at charter. And it parlays into what we saw from the Education Committee, where a lot of the resources that are now being available to our students in curriculum development, the pilot programs that are being led by our teachers, those types of things are standardized things that we're incorporating in our schools that we didn't necessarily have before, which is going to bring kids into our schools. Yeah, no, I think that charter enrollment will continue to go down as we start to introduce these programs.
Okay. Okay, so this contract for Dr. Kristernick, Can we expect to see these throughout the district? I mean, this is West Brandywine. Are we going to be seeing this in the city of Codesville, South Codesville?
We have not seen them in the other jurisdictions, only for Camelot we've seen them, and West Brandywine Township.
So are we anticipating contracts such as?
No, we are not. Nope.
Okay. I mean, I understand this person used to be on the board, but it bothers me because it seems like we are getting our taxes processed through Berkheimer, and this guy checked number 2, so he essentially is not going to be doing anything. It just, I don't know, it's kind of scary. And you don't have to say anything, but basically tax collector will not have any responsibilities and will receive 50 cents per bill as compensation. I guess I'm in the wrong field. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shannon. Ms. Diefendorf, if I could just clarify the first point that Ms. Shannon had brought up, and that was the legal and debt services. You alluded to a vast, almost 60% of that to be associated with our debt and bond restructuring that we had gone through. The remaining balance of that, as it relates to legal services, are not necessarily payments directly to legal firms that represent the district. That includes settlements as well.
That's correct.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. So not just, as a point of clarity, that's Ms. Shannon, it's not just necessarily services rendered. That includes any settlement payouts as well. You're welcome. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, February 8, 2022, and I'll call for adjournment at 6:52 p.m.
Mr. Rowan could not be with us this evening as the operations chair, so I've asked Mr. Fangbarner to fill in for him. Mr. Fangbarner?
Thank you, Mr. Bishop. All right, so I'd like to call to order the Operations Committee for January 11, 2022. First order of business is the approval of the minutes. We have 2 items. Letter A, approval of the October 12, 2021 Operations Committee meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
Motion. Mr. Brown?
And we'll call for a vote.
Yes.
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 And letter B, approval of the minutes, recommended action, approval of the November 9, 2021 Operation Committee meeting minutes. Do we have a motion?
Motion. Second.
And we'll call for a vote.
Yes.
Yes. I see no presentations on the agenda for tonight, so we'll go to the agenda items. First up is letter A, Roofing Resources Incorporated 2022 roof replacements and designs at North Brandywine Middle School. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the proposal from Roofing Resources Incorporated to perform Phase 2 design and bid services for the replacement of 2 roof areas at North Brandywine Middle School at a fee of 6% of the actual construction costs, inclusive to all expenses as presented. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Letter B, mainline commercial pools, pool mechanical equipment repairs. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the proposal from mainline commercial pools to repair and replace water filtration equipment in the pool mechanical room at the Codesville Area Senior High School at a cost of $34,813.30 as presented. Do we have a motion?
Second.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Letter C, mainline commercial pools monthly water management program and chemicals. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the proposal from mainline commercial pools to provide a monthly water management program for the pool at the Codesville Area Senior High School, including 2 visits per month, and chemicals for a cost of $1,250 monthly as presented. Do we have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Any questions or comments?
If I might, I think it's important to note that this is also part of the work that we're doing to rehabilitate the pool. As you said earlier, we have 2 monthly visits. This is something that within the next year could go down to a monthly visit, depending on how this works. And we think this is very important to be able to, again, think about this as preventative maintenance, that as we're rehabilitating the pool, that we're making sure that all the details are being taken care of here. So this is where automatically chemicals are added as opposed to doing it manually, and that's a savings. We just want to be sure that we do this and do it correctly.
Thank you, Mr. Hand. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote.
Yes.
Yes. Letter D, Renesys Corporation, credit change order for pool liner replacement. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve a credit change order from Renesys Corporation for the pool liner replacement project at the Codesville Area School District Senior High School. A credit of $1,000 will be deducted from the pool contractor's remaining balance for the removal of the pressure test as presented. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote.
Yes.
Yes. Letter E, Bristol Environment Incorporated asbestos abatement. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors ratify the proposal from Bristol Environmental Incorporated to perform professional vinyl asbestos tile, VAT, removal, abatement at Kings Highway Elementary School in rooms 8, 10, and 23 at a total cost not to exceed $3,925 as presented. Do we have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote.
Yes.
Yes. Letter F, Wigan Shredding Incorporated updated secure shredding services agreement. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the updated quote for secure shredding services agreement with Wigan Shredding Incorporated to provide shredding services, including 4 security bins and pickups every 8 weeks at a cost of $96 per pickup for a 2-year term. This agreement reduces the number of pickups from 13 per year to 6.5 per year as presented. Do we have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Any questions or comments? Ms. Diefendorfer, I'm going to make the assumption here that this is likely associated with just a recurring analysis of our contracted services.
Yes, we're finding we're not using it as often as, so we wanted to reduce the amount of times that they come to pick up the shredding service.
Okay. Awesome oversight by your team and Mr. Pelican and your team as well to identify that as an area of cost savings. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote.
Yes.
Yes. Any informational items? Any old business? Any new business? And public comment. All right, seeing that we don't have any public comment, our next meeting will be Tuesday, February 8, 2022, and I'll call for adjournment of the Operations Committee at 6:59 p.m.
I'd like to call to order the Policy Committee meeting. First item is approval of the minutes. Recommended action approval of the December 7, 2021 Special Policy Committee meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second? Okay, second. Call for the vote. Abstention.
Yes.
Okay, yes. There are no presentations. Moving on to agenda items. Letter A, Policy 209.1, Food Allergy Management. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the Policy 209.1, Food Allergy Management as presented, and if approved, to move forward, the agenda item be placed on the agenda of the January 11, 2022 board meeting. Do I have a motion? Motion.
Second.
Anyone have any questions? Call for the vote. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Letter B, Policy 209.2, Diabetes Management. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the Policy 209.2, Diabetes Management as presented, and if approved, to move forward, that the agenda item be placed on the agenda of the January 11th, 2022 board meeting. Do I have a motion? Motion.
Motion. Second.
Do I have any questions, comments? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Moving on to letter C. Policy 210.1, possession, administration of asthma inhalers and epinephrine. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the policy 210.1, possession, administration of asthma inhalers, epinephrine as presented, and if approved, to move forward that the agenda item be placed on the agenda of the January 11, 2022 board meeting. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote.
Yes.
Yes, and yes. Letter D. Policy 216, student records. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the policy 216, student records as presented, and if approved, to move forward that the agenda item be placed on the agenda of the January 11, 2022 board meeting. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, let's call for the vote.
Yes.
Yes, and yes. Letter E. Policy 216.1, supplemental discipline records, reporting and discipline records retention. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the policy 216.1, supplemental discipline records, reporting and discipline records retention as presented, and if approved, to move forward that the agenda item be placed on the agenda of the January 11, 2022 board meeting. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, let's call for the vote.
Yes.
Yes, and yes. Letter F, policy 236.1, threat assessment. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the policy 236.1 threat assessment as presented, and if approved, to move forward that the agenda item be placed on the agenda of the January 11, 2022 board meeting. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second. Any questions or concerns? Mr. Hanna, I do have a couple of questions. So I have the policy. I don't know how you want me to refer to the questions for you. So it says, prior to the creation of any school-based assessment, the superintendent shall report to the board the why such a team is needed and why the team cannot adequately address the situation. So I understand that this is a new policy being created. So for my question for the first one, when will this be done? When will that be presented to the board?
We'd like to have that done as soon as possible. We have been engaged in this conversation since the summer. I want to be sure that the team is ready to go. And I know Mr. Galbraith, Chief Galbraith is here. He's been supporting this work, and we will have that to you as soon as we possibly can have it done for you.
So my next question is that it is saying that it needs to be an annual board report. So I noticed in a lot of these policies, most of them are asking for annual board reports. Do you have a date set aside that you will be presenting this to the board as well?
Generally, this report will, if I'm not mistaken, goes into the final report that we provide to you at the end of the year in June.
Okay.
With regard to the safety and security issues within the district.
They also are saying that the following school district programs and services need to be provided. So I do know that we have the student assistance program. I know that we have the youth suicide awareness, prevention, and response. I know we have Safe to Say, multi-tiered system of support, and the positive behavioral intervention. My question is that it's saying that we need to have a trauma-informed approach. So how are we as a district going to do this?
So through the work that's happening in people services, as you know, when we started the school year, we actually had in this very auditorium training for all of our staff, and with the speaker who came and spoke to us about this work. The work that we've also been doing through the Lincoln Center and the grants that we've been securing with them to push us in that direction as well, to be sure that the training we're going to offer as we move forward has a trauma-informed sort of flavor to it, as it were. I'd share with you that one of the strategies we're most proud of most recently is the addition of climate coaches here to the district. And we've got 2 climate coaches here at the campus that are looking to restructure grants to add additional, actually not at the campus, because Mr. Maloney will call me out on it. Currently both are in cash, and we're looking to add a climate coach over at the Intermediate High School. And we think that that's going to be a great strategy to sort of work with de-escalation, engaging students in relationships and things of this sort. That is, frankly, a very strong trauma-enforced strategy in our opinion.
Okay. My next question is that it says that the team shall make available age-appropriate informational materials to students regarding recognition of threatening or at-risk behavior that may present a threat to the student, other students, school employees, school facility, the community, or others, and how to report concerns, including through the Safe to Say Something program and other school districts reporting hotlines or methods. Informational materials shall be available for review by parents. How will this be distributed to our parents?
We will make every effort either through messenger or students taking materials home or having parent meetings with folks so that they can become aware of that and we can provide them that information. Those certainly need to be planned. We've also done trainings on the Safe to Say, where last year, for example, it was done online, was done via Zoom so that students could engage in that as well.
I still have a few more questions.
Okay.
So one of the other ones is that it talks about that each building needs to have a child study team. So are we prepared to put this in place in each building?
Well, the child study team I would say yes, that we are, because that is, if you think about the kind of work that we're doing with data teams, if you think about the kind of work that we do, bringing teams together, whether that be an IEP conversation and things of this sort, that those kinds of conversations are happening throughout the district, right? And so we certainly feel that we're positioned to do this work and do it well, build on what we already do, and get better where we need to get better.
So even though it's not necessarily the IEP team?
Correct.
Okay. So it talks about developing an individualized management plan. So do we know what this is? Do we know what this will look like?
We don't yet. That's work that we've got to dig deep on and make sure that we're clear about what that is and how it is that we as an organization can do that work. But we've got to do it.
Okay, and again, you may not be able to answer this question, but I will follow up with it. So with that, in the individualized management plan, it says that there needs to be ongoing monitoring of the student by the threat assessment team or the child study team. There needs to be follow-up assessments, referrals, re-entry plans. So I'm assuming that whoever is in charge of that individualized management plan will also be trained in how to do what is being asked.
And that's correct. This is if you think of an example, let's say Tomas gets in trouble at school for some reason and identifies and exhibits certain behaviors. The team has to come together and work with Tomas, not a bunch of people, but with Tomas to be sure that the issues he's bringing to the table are addressed, right? And so that gets to what the individualized plan is, that it's for me, about me, to support me, and having the staff in place to be sure that they're taking a look at what that individualized plan is, adjusted however it needs to be adjusted if it's an out-of-school suspension or I've got to go for some sort of therapy or something to that extent. Coming back, what does that look like? You know, how do I sort of onboard back into the building to be sure that my needs are being met? So absolutely, I would say to you that our schools do this, they engage in it, and this is calling out that we've got to continue to do that work.
Okay, that's it. Thank you. So let's call for the vote.
Yes.
Yes.
And yes. Item 5 is informational items. So, Mr. Fisher, you might have to help me with this. So, letter L is 214-AR-0, which is class rank. The administration would like to have more discussion regarding this class rank. So, we are going to be moving it to new business next month. Is that correct? Did I do that right?
Yes, Madam Chair. As you stated, at this point in time, the high school administration, central administration would like to have a little more time to discuss this. before bringing it forward to us. So at this point in time, we'll remove that from this agenda, and then next month we'll revisit it.
Thank you. There's no old business. There is new business. Letter A is a presentation for review and discussion on the following policies: 204 attendance, 212 reporting, student progress, 215 retention and promotion acceleration, and 217 graduation. Mr. Hanna?
I will do that. And gentlemen, I'd like to be able to use it from my computer, if that's okay? Is that mine or is that yours? Thank you, Mrs. Harlan. I appreciate that. Before I start, I'd like to acknowledge folks some who are here, some who are not, and may be asked to come and help us with this. I'd like to thank Principals Melissa Willis. I'd like to thank Michelle Snyder. I'd like to thank, let me try that again, Mrs. Melissa Willis, Ms. Michelle Snyder, Mr. Cliff Maloney, Dr. Wilson Lambert, Mr. Darian Smith, Ms. Brenda George, Mr. Jason Palaia, Ms. Lynn Mancinelli, and Ms. Cassandra Jones, who have sort of come together under the leadership of Dr. Dunlap, who's, as you all know, has been working on the policy work as we've done this over the last year. And so tonight we're going to talk about policy 204, 212, 215, and 217. And these are conversations. There's no votes that are going to be taken with regard to these, but these are conversations that the team is having. One of the driving questions that was posed to the policy committee with regard to, frankly, by our school leadership was, how is it that we can ensure that students continue to value the education they get here in the district? And we truly believe that these 4 policies are something that are important in terms of our students and what that would look like. And so the first policy is policy 204, which is with regard relative to attendance. And again, this is proposed because there are conversations that are happening. And this is the notion of a couple of areas that are tied to attendance, particularly the idea of students having an attendance record of 90% as they're doing their class. The fact that if they're under 90%, that they may not get credit for the class, right? Because we want to be sure students are in their classrooms, engaged in this work with their teachers and with their classmates. In other words, in very vernacular, right? We're not mailing it in, right? We need to be present to engage in this work. Also, need to understand that we don't want to penalize students who may be doing official school business, whether that be engaged in homebound instruction for whatever reason, or they've engaged in psychological testing or something to that effect. Something that is excused, we would not penalize young people for this. But bottom line with this one is we want to be sure students are engaged in classes, engaged in the work on a daily basis. Other additions here that we're proposing are guidelines that I know it's very small, and we apologize for that. This will be available online. Is to be sure that when there's an absence that parents in fact are providing us with an excuse of why is that? Why is it legitimate? Right? And that it needs to be within 3 days that we receive this information. Right? In the middle and the elementary schools, same thing here. Being sure that as students who miss 10 days, that we're notified as to what's going on with the student. We need to be aware of that. Same thing with regard to students who miss 15 days or what happens after 18 days. And we know that that's an issue that we want to ensure that we engage. If you think about it, 18 days out of a 180-day school year is what? So 10% of the school year. Right? And so we want to be sure that we're staying on top of these, and so that these are processes and systems we want to put in place so that we can support our families. On the high school side, sort of similar to what we talked about earlier, and I do want to point out that here we're talking about students who are accruing a certain number of absences. Again, 19 absences, and what does that look like? And what does it mean is that a student may have credit denied because they've not been there. The second bullet point here speaks to unlawful class absences due to truancy or cutting class, an issue as well in terms of the, what we know some of our students engage in, could result in a 45 for that work, for the work missed that day. And so this is a notion of holding young people accountable, right, making sure that they are where they need to be so that they can get the knowledge that they need to get. And again, this next series of 5 bullets speaks to the types of administrative procedures we want to have in place to support students, to support our faculty so that young people are in classrooms learning on a daily basis. Again, this also speaks to our SAFE process, right, which is our student attendance and improvement team, right, in that work and what that looks like to be sure that parents are engaged in that work. And certainly at the end of the day, it'll be up to the principal to make a decision with regard to how attendance has impacted the student's performance in a class. And so we want to be sure that those are items that we have in place. The current practice is, as you can see, I'm not going to read through that, but here's a lot of the current practice that's in place where we're notifying families in the mail once, twice, 3 times. And what does that look like? As we said earlier, the school attendance improvement plans are an important part of this work. Mr. Smith, who's here in the audience, sort of drives that work. And this also gets us in some places where if students constantly are absent, and we've got a violation of the compulsory attendance provisions of our school code, that could mean fines for families. It could also mean that if it continues, that students will be referred to other agencies for support, to the court for support. We have Judge Hines, who's here many times to swear folks in. He's also working with our young people in the most positive way possible to try to figure out how can we improve this for our families and for our students. And so that's what that speaks to here in this slide in terms of additional fines potentially happening for additional illegal absences. And students who are 15 years of age and fail to meet this, we could be recommending them to community-based programs, as well as a citation against a parent that would take them to the magistrate. Here it's also important that the current practice is that our school police chief and our home and school visitor and attendance officers, in fact, are authorized to do this work and to bring students in so that we can work with them. In fact, today, Mr. Smith and I were engaging about a student as we were over at North talking about a young person and his attendance policies, his attendance and what types of things we were going to do to try to continue to bring the student in, which included a conversation with his father. And what that meant. So these are the types of things that we have to continue, that we want to build upon. Relative to truancy, these are just definitions in terms of students who are not coming to school and what that means and the type of support that we could provide. And the second bullet speaks to the types of supports: parental conferences, early reprimands, after school detention, or in-school suspension. And if these don't work, as we said earlier, refer to other agencies and potentially to the court. Same thing here with tardiness. Again, the structure of current practice, our structure in terms of how many instances of students being late and what happens, and in terms of minutes and things of this sort. We know that a student who's absent 10 minutes every single day to the same class, that's 50 minutes a week. That's an entire period, right? So while we think tardy, you're a couple minutes here, a couple minutes there, when you add it all up, there's a lot of instructional time lost. So what we're going to do with Policy 204 is we're going to take a look at the current ARs and what we showed earlier in slides 2, 3, and 4, that all those recommendations, see the extent to which we could apply those recommendations into the ARs. ARs, once again, are administrative regulations. It's what the policy looks like for us as an administrative team to engage in the work. I want to stop for a second and just look to our principals who were supported. Have we captured what we were looking for out of the policy and the conversations you all have had? Yes. Were there any questions from the team here with regard to 204?
I have a couple of questions. My first question is, so you said in the slide that after, I think it was about the SAFE. So I just want to know how far behind we are on our SAFE meetings, because if we're supposed to be having these meetings after the third absence, what's that turnaround? Are we really having it after the third absence?
Mr. Smith, can I bother you to help us out with that one, please? Thank you.
ideal. We would love to have there for the third actions. Oftentimes it does not occur. But we are holding those state meetings. In some instances, it could be child may have accrued maybe 8 to 10 absences if we're holding the meetings at that time. The child may have actually had 8 to 10 consecutive days. So on that first notification that goes out, we'll send out that absence notification letter, and then there could be a discussion with the school council, the principal, and myself, and we may say, in lieu of, sending out additional letters, we'll hold the meeting now. So we can hold that state meeting at any time. We're not locked into the third notification going out before we actually hold the meeting.
And are we behind in our state meetings, or are we pretty much on, like, do we have ones waiting in the wings?
We do have ones waiting in the wings. I was talking to a school counselor this morning, and she says she has at least a dozen or more to schedule. So she's receiving that information from her attendance secretary weekly as to what students are now at the point where they need to have an actual school attendance improvement plan.
So that leads me into my second question, where on the previous slide, it was mentioned that a warning letter would be sent home after being late. Was it 2 times, 3 times, 2 times? I don't have it.
That's
okay, so after the second incident of being late, a warning, okay. So as a parent, I have received letters like way after.
After the 2 periods.
So how are we going to streamline? Because I'm gonna be honest with you, that's a lot of letters going out, because I'm not a teacher, but I would have to say that a lot of kids are late to class, like a lot. So that's a lot of letters. Who is gonna do that? How is it going to be streamlined, and how are these parents? So you're saying Tuesday, let's just say Monday, Tuesday, the kid's late. When's that letter's gotta go out Tuesday? Is it going out by email? Is it going out by mail? And is it going to get to that parent in that timely manner? Or is it going to be 2 weeks later and the student has accrued a lot of late time?
I can't give you a definitive answer or response to that. I know they are getting them out in a timely manner, although it may not be, after that second instance, it may have, that letter could be coming out and they've already accrued 10 late or more.
Right, so then I guess it's not that I think this is a great plan. I just think that if we're going to say after 2 incidences, then we need to figure out a way that after those 2 incidences, we're sending that letter home. Because then after the third one, they're getting a detention. So again, my question would be, is that detention happening right away? Or is that detention, again, happening 3-4 days later?
Now, one thing I'd point out, Mrs. Harlan, is that this is current practice. What's currently in place, and so part of the conversation, if I'm not mistaken, is to ensure that we're engaged in a conversation with regard to how realistic is this to be able to do this and make sure that it makes sense, but is it doable? And I think that's what I'm hearing you say.
So yeah, because it's funny that you said that it's current, because I thought this was being proposed, because I can tell you after 2 instances of being late, I've never received a warning letter. So is this really happening? And same with the after 3 incidences. So if it's current practice,
Right.
is it really going forward?
Good.
Good evening. So it's my understanding, and I was confused by this too, because I believe that this is a proposed, we used to do this.
That's what I thought in the beginning you guys said proposed.
Yes. So this used to be part of what we would do when I was an assistant principal. This was how we would handle lates to school, not lates to class.
Okay.
This is lates to school.
Thank you for that clarification.
And so this is the what we would do, and here are disciplinary consequences for lates. It is my understanding that this is being returned to our current practice.
And this is only for late to school, not late to class?
That's correct.
Thank you for that clarification. I was not, okay, then that makes a lot more sense. Okay. I appreciate that, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all my questions.
Okay.
Good, and I'll go back and find out why this is current practice, why it says we've got it here as current practice, so we'll be sure that gets adjusted. So next item in terms of the next policy is 212, and this is reporting student progress. And this is a basic, just a shift on the K-5 side where we have been engaging in standard-based report cards, right? And so you can see here the key and what it is that our families receive when elementary report cards go out. And one of the things that we want to do is to ensure that begins to shift, particularly given the new programming we're looking at as a district, right? And so you'll have here, you can see what happens on the kindergarten side, right? Where what we're learning is that we can't, based on how we have it, like tell the entire story of how our students are doing. So we want to be sure that happens as we move forward. And the way we want to be able to do that is as we take a look at, again, the new programming we're bringing in, how is it that our grading process reporting is going to align to that? And so this is an important piece that we think, and we know the principals are looking forward to this, so that we can ensure that our parents are getting the entire story. This last bullet here speaks to the data we're using with Acadians, and we're using that very much, but like where can we share it? Where can we show it so that parents see how that's going on? And so that's what we want to be able to do as we engage in the AR and the administrative regulations to support the policy. So here would be the recommendations on 212, is as we choose a new ELA program, revamp the elementary report card to reflect the new assessments that will support standards and the new curriculum. That would make perfect sense to do that. And so the second one is to develop an AR that provides direction to supporting this policy so that students and their parents and guardians actually get meaningful information on student progress. And that's what 212 purports to do. The other area, that's on the elementary side. On the secondary side, there are a couple of highlighted areas here because there's some what we might call in the subway industry, like some third rail issues that we want to engage in with folks that we want to be sure that folks have an opportunity to engage in, right? And so here you see how we look at providing supports to students and with regard to their progress. What's highlighted speaks to this notion of the 50% floor. So what's the minimum grade or mark that a student can get? And so part of the challenge here is knowing that students can get at a certain number, right? Can get a 50, but again, past the year, right? And so they can again, we want to avoid the mailing it in. So the 90% attendance helps us get there. Some level of attendance marker that ensures students are in place is very important. And what kind of percentage do you get? So if you didn't show up at all first semester and you did nothing and you get a 50, you could still, as the year goes, end up passing the class. And so the question that has to happen on the equity side is how do we ensure that we're being fair to students who may have a catastrophic event or may have some issues within their lives, which I know we can deal with, but also what does that mean with regard to, frankly, students who just know I don't have to show, but I'm going to get, at the end of the day, I'm going to be okay. We know that's an issue as we move forward. So that's part of the conversation here that we want to have, and again, not to put it out there now, but to continue this conversation because we know it's a very important piece for the district. The other two items here that are highlighted are what midterms look like and the value of midterms from 5% to 10%, and sort of engaging in that discussion as we move forward. So again, I'll look to my colleagues to be sure that this captures that conversation. If you see it, it's a combination of what are the grades, right, but also how it ties into the attendance piece, right? And so that's what 212 is doing on the secondary side. Is that, Michelle? Is that Ms. Snyder and Mr. Maloney? Did that capture the essence of the conversations you guys have had? And here you can see what types of information has been used historically to measure progress on the elementary side as well as on the secondary side. And the ARs here on the secondary side, 122 and 123, that speak to eligibility and things of that sort. Policy 215 speaks to retention and promotion. And what this policy really looks to do is to add acceleration, be very explicit about acceleration, so that if you're a student you're in third grade and you're doing really well, is there the opportunity for a conversation about potentially accelerating to another grade so that we can really meet your needs and so forth. And again, this is something that the principal would do. The data teams that are in place now really put themselves in a good position to be able to do this work, so that we're taking a look at real data in real time and make decisions like, look, this young person is doing unbelievably well. What does that mean? And it also speaks to the work that we've got to do on the people services side around gifted education and making sure that we're really promoting that, so that we've got students on the on the gifted side. But again, look out to the crowd to see the folks who will participate in that. I believe that 215 captures in the retention and promotion policy, so the acceleration side. Was that correct as well?
Yes, and also to have a process for the retention. So updating the AR.
Right. Next slide here speaks to ensuring that the ARs are in place, so that on both the retention side, on the promotion side, and acceleration, there's very clear processes. Very much parental engagement is expected, and parents are engaged in the conversation, and frankly, can either nix it, right? If they don't want to move, they engage in that conversation, but there's a process around what that looks like. And you can see on the retention process, what has the IST done? Right? What about MTSS? What are the reporting dates, and what in fact has happened, so that we're not surprising a parent at the end of the year saying, oh, by the way, so sorry, it's not working out. And what conversations have happened previously? This helps to document that. And here are the ARs that we're looking to ensure that we have in place. And much of it you can see it's got to do with communications. And then here, on additions to the final one, proposed additions to policy 217, this is basically adding pathways toward graduation, the state expectations for our students, across the board, and what that looks like. So we're updating that so that it's current with what students are expected to do based on the state of Pennsylvania. So you see here the Keystone Proficiency Pathway, the Keystone Composite Pathway. Also looking at adding the alternative assessment or pre-apprentice pathways for our students, so that this is something that's not lost on what it is that's expected to happen, as well as the evidence-based pathways and the CTE pathways. Ms. Snyder, anything there that you want to add to? And then ARs to reflect that, once again, what do the ARs look like? And then there's the third bullet here speaks to student obligations, and there are dates here. When we go to do the AR, we pull the dates out, of course, but this is the notion of okay, what is it that you've got to do to be able to walk, to be able to go to prom, to be able to do these things, and what are the obligations that students have, and how are we holding them responsible for these types of things. I remember when I was in high school, if I got threatened with not going to prom, I would make sure I got my whatever it was, library books, sports equipment in, whatever that would look like. So this is sort of a thing we're looking to make sure that we have in place as well. Is that accurate as well, Ms. Snyder and Mr. Maloney? And I think that does it for for that piece of the policy. Like I said earlier, conversations that are happening, right? And we're going to come back to the board with what this looks like. And if there are questions that we'd like to entertain, that you want to be sure that the committee takes back, we certainly want to do that and hear from you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanna.
Madam Chair, may I inject a couple thoughts, please?
Absolutely, you can.
First and foremost, I'd like to applaud you for your questions, because although this is in discussion stage, if we're going to be developing policies that we can't adhere to, then there's really no use in developing policies, correct?
Correct.
And I can assure you, the one particular side that you had the litany of questions about, those were policies that were followed in the school district. And as Mrs. Snyder alluded to, as an assistant principal, there was a lot of time and effort spent into making sure that those policies were adhered to, and ultimately that students were held accountable. So if we're going to continue from the discussion stage into a policy development, I highly suggest that when you are bringing that to the board, it's something that you feel as though you can support, because not supporting policies doesn't help anybody. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Tricia.
Ms. Hart, I have a quick question, Mr. Hanna. You had alluded to a student that does not, the way our grade structuring is that if a student doesn't attend class, doesn't participate, puts forth zero effort, will still maintain a 50%. Maybe call me old school at the ripe old age of 35, but wasn't too long ago when I was in school, and grades are earned, not given. So maybe just from an understanding perspective, can you share why a student that had zero participation, zero major attendance issues, zero effort given, why would a student receive a 50% as opposed to a lesser grade based off of what they've contributed?
Well, there's, as I mentioned earlier, there's an equity. I was a former high school principal, and we struggled with this issue, Mr. Van Bonner, because there's a notion of in first semester, if you didn't give the student an opportunity to sort of figure things out, you didn't know what was happening in their life. I don't know that that's the case in every single situation, right? The student could then say, well, I'm out after first semester, right? And there's no way I can make any of the work up. Right, and so we don't know that that's the case in every situation. So we want to take a look at things on an as-needed basis or on a case-by-case basis to see what the situation is. But I will share with you, when I was a high school principal, I had teachers who just did not want to give did not want to do the 65 or the 50. They wanted to do the 30. They wanted to do the 0 because they wanted to make a statement that, like, you're not coming to my class and what I have to do what. Right, so that is certainly an issue on the one side. On the other side, though, it's that we continue to hear about the dropout factors, right? And we continue this notion of what can we do to prevent that. And so we've got to figure out internally as we respond to that question, how do we do it so that students are engaged. And it might be something that we've got to, I don't mean to get controversial here, but it may be something with regard to what's happening in classrooms and how are we engaging students so they in fact can engage. We had a question earlier about what are we doing with young people who are in high school and are reading at a fifth grade reading level, right? Those are areas as well. So I don't want to just pin it all on the young person, pin it all on teachers. And it's all of us together, and what is that going to look like? And what we're hoping is that as we engage in this MTSS work, that we're providing support with the for those students. So it's a long-winded response to that doesn't have a right, to be frank, a right answer, because it's like a snow day, right? So it doesn't it's not going to please everyone. Mr. Fisher, I know you got experience and would like to chime in.
Let me give you the Reader's Digest version. As a long-time principal of this high school, and at the ripe old age of 65, I am old school. But I also understood, don't want to say I always accepted, but I understood the fact that numerically, if you have a student that is in your classroom that gets let's say a 10% the first marking period, it very quickly becomes numerically impossible for that student to pass that class. Then it becomes, as Mr. Hanna said, the student has no desire to go to the class if they don't have the opportunity to pass it. Now, I'm not saying it's right, but I'm just sharing with you some of the philosophy behind that. All right. So that being said, I'll say again, I'm old school too. So, but again, I go back to we have to have policies that we can support if we're going to move forward. But since you mentioned grades, Madam Chair, as we move forward with and those administrative people that are involved in it, I totally understand the standard-based education, but I feel badly for our elementary school students who have to come home and say to mom and dad, how did I do on my report card? What's an MA? What's an ME? The good old days of coming home with a smile on your face because you understood your report card and you did well. Maybe you got a trip to the Dairy Queen or whatever it may be, but you understood where you are. I struggle with, again, I understand standards-based education, and I understand our report cards need to reflect that. But And I don't understand how comes we can't use something that's a little more simple that students understand. I'm talking about our young students. All right, now I'm done.
You sure? I just want to say one thing. President Fisher mentioned that when he was principal, he had some students that had that 10%, and we know that, you know, with that, you can't make that up. My hope is, as we're moving forward, that when we see that student that is going down that path, that we know that they're going down that path, that we step in before it gets to that 10%, and we find out why they're not attending class and why they're struggling so much. That would just be my hope, that moving forward with all of this, that we do reach out to those students that are struggling like that. Public comment, I already have it. Lori Shannon Bailey.
Good evening, thank you. At the ripe old age of 100, I too am old school. So policy, first of all, Mr. Hanna and administration, I want to commend you for what I'm hearing about the possibilities of addressing some of this truancy and absenteeism. It is an epidemic, and I don't have to tell you that. I was working with a dad who had 3 children, and I've mentioned this before, but it blows me away. And one of the things that keeps me up at night, 3 children that missed over 100 days. That's crazy, but it's the dad's fault. And unfortunately, in this community, I'll tell the whole world, most of the truancy problems are the parents' irresponsibility. And I know that you can't do anything about that, but I'm with you 1,000%. Find the parents. Go after their pocketbooks. If you can arrest them, arrest them. You know, kids don't ask to be born. And it's troubling. It's troubling. How do you have 3 kids that miss 100 days of school? And yes, COVID had something to do with it, but parents are just not engaged. Sorry, I had to go there. So policy 215AR says it was adopted February the 22nd of 2022, last revised February the 22nd of 2022, and last reviewed February 22nd of 2022. So this is a parental response form. So are these dates wrong here, or what? Policy 215 AR6. It was posted. I printed it out. I didn't make it up. Apparently it's a new form, but if you all are revising it in a date that's not here yet.
It's very possible that is the revision and the date that we'd like to have that officially go forward, which is February 22nd, but we'd have to take a look back at that to see how it plays out.
Okay, so basically it's
sometimes what you'll see is we will date things in the future because we're 2 weeks out, so that would be a board approval of the 5th of the 20. I think our next board meeting was the 25th in the month. So but that doesn't look right. So I appreciate you raising it so we can take a look at it.
Well, thank you. Again, when we don't know things, we have conversations in our heads. So let me make this quick because I'm sure I'll hit the buzzer here in a few minutes. So the student attendance improvement plan, I do have that policy. I think it's a great, policy. It does bear ongoing conversations, as I think I've said earlier. The reporting and discipline records retention policy was adopted in May of 1996. It doesn't have a revision date. And I'm just wondering, are you all revising this policy, or is it just going to be a rollover as it is? 1996 was a long time ago, and I'm just curious.
That's part of the work to update those policies.
Okay.
And by the way, I've been looking at others that do have that February 22nd date. That's sort of that look-see in the future, so that date will likely change, so that it's exactly when it is that the board approves that, when the policy is approved, and then that's when we would make sure that would be dated.
Okay,
so
we'll just keep in mind.
We will make sure those be adjusted.
Right, yes, keep in mind, we don't know this information.
I'm glad you're asking a question so we can share that with you.
Well, thank you. And then finally, you mentioned climate coaches, that we have 2 in the district. I have no idea what a climate coach is. It sounds like it's a good thing, but it would be good information for the public to be aware of who they are and what their roles are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, February 8th, 2022, and I'd like to adjourn the policy committee at 7:46 p.m.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Codesville School District Special School Board meeting for Tuesday, January 11, 2022. Agenda item 1B, purpose of the meeting. Purpose of the meeting is to approve the bills payable and any other matters that may come before the board. Agenda item 1C, reading of the mission statement. The mission of the Codesville School District, rich in diversity and committed to excellence, is to create innovative educational experiences which are funded by the taxpayers, supported by the community, delivered by dedicated teachers and administrators to ensure all students will become responsible, contributing global citizens. Agenda item 1D, advisement. By notice of the President, board members are advised that all votes shall be regarded as roll call votes. The minutes should also note that public notice was given for this meeting in accordance with Act 93 of 1998, Section 1. School board meetings shall proceed in accordance with school board policy. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll, please?
Rob Fisher.
Here.
Arvell Brown.
Here.
Holly Charest. Here. Andrew Finkbeiner.
Here.
Becky Harlan. Here. Mary Ann Harris.
Here.
Amelia Mills.
Here.
Jennifer Schott. Here. Brandon Roan.
Madam Secretary, Mr. Roan has asked to be excused this evening. At this time, we will have a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. To my colleagues, are there any additions, deletions, or modifications to this evening's agenda? Additions, deletions, or modifications to the agenda? I do have one, and it will be a deletion. So if I can call everyone's attention to agenda item 8D, policy 212, reporting student progress. I'm going to ask that we delete this from the agenda this evening. This was presented as an informational item during the policy committee. Therefore, it has not followed the proper procedure to be moved forward to the special board meeting through the policy committee. So I'm asking that we delete this and that we make it a part of the agenda either later this month or during the month of February. So we will delete, once again, agenda item 8D, policy 212, reporting student progress. Are there any other additions, deletions, or modifications? So, Madam Secretary, considering that we have modified this evening's agenda, would you make the appropriate roll call for approval?
Do we want to second that motion?
I'll second the motion.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
Amelia Mills.
Yes.
Jennifer Schott.
Yes.
Holly Charest.
Yes.
Rob Fisher.
Yes.
Andrew Finkbeiner.
Yes.
Becky Harlan.
Yes.
Arvell Brown. Mary Ann Harris.
Yes.
Agenda item 3A, public comment on agenda items. The board has requested all persons making comments on agenda items to list their names, address, telephone number, and motion item on the sheet provided. There is a 3-minute time limit per person. The board does not take action or discuss items not appearing on the agenda. The board values public comments and wishes to convey that although board members cannot discuss items that are not on the agenda, they listen carefully and appreciate and value input from the public. Lori Shannon Bailey.
Good evening, thank you very much. I have a copy of the roofing policy for North Brandywine High School. I'm just wondering whether or not we compared estimates from other vendors. Do we do that on a routine basis, or do we get recommendations from other districts, or do we contract with our cousins and things of that nature? This is a $247,000 job here, and I'm not suggesting that it's not needed, but I would like to know in terms of our tax dollars, or how many other vendors did we compare? And then also the release exchange of information form. I noticed that there is a new one. I got an old one, the very first one that I got from the district way back when, and I got some pushback from some of the staff, unfortunately, at Scott and at the 910 Center regarding the form. They didn't recognize me as an advocate with the form, so now the form has been changed, and I don't have a copy of it, I have a copy of the old one. This is what the old one looks like. My issue is the new form doesn't have the detailed information that the old form has. So the old form has that, as an advocate, I would have in my advocacy for families, I would have access to educational records, neurological, medical information, psychiatric information, summary, it's a whole bunch of things. And I check every single thing, because as an advocate, I want to make sure I'm looking at all the information that's available. So my question would be, why are we changing the new form to limit the information that an advocate can have in terms of helping and supporting some of these families? And the issue is really working with a lot of the families who don't know what their rights are in terms of special education. I mean, they don't know an IEP from, any other formal document. And IEPs are very long and they're intimidating for me at my age. And if you have a family who's not engaged, i.e. a family who has 3 children that are truant, missed over 100 days, then how in the world is that parent supposed to know anything about his rights? So that's what it all boils down to. And then finally, please make sure your numbers are correct in terms of the charter school enrollment. I had reached out to a board member in November when I compared the numbers that you all had put out in terms of the enrollment for charter schools and that whole form that we kind of gleaned over tonight. The numbers in November were off, and I know they're off because I connected with 2 charter schools and did a comparison, and the numbers were off. So whether it was a mistake, whatever, I'm not trying to be accusatory here. As taxpayers, these enrollment numbers are important, so if we could please just make sure we're providing, accurate information to the public. Thanks.
Ms. Shannonville, let me just get you an answer on your first question, because that's an easy answer for you. I see Mr. Pellegrin is no longer here, but Ms. Stephen Durford, can you just briefly, very brief, oh, there he is. I'm sorry, Mr. Pellegrin.
That's okay.
Just a real quick background on when we do the bid process, how that works.
Okay, so what happens is, during the bid process, we use a company called Roofing Resources, or a third-party roofing consulting company.
Mm-hmm.
They put together a number, it's a base number based upon the RSP, construction, building costs, and it actually did not go out to bid yet, so that process will happen. It's a type of roof, a Carlisle roof, will go out to vendors that supply that type of roof, and that bid process will happen then. So right now, the money, the dollar number that you see, that's just based upon construction costs. That's what they're at right now. They still did not go out to bid yet because they have to get it approved before going out to bid, and then once the bids come back, usually the number is less.
Okay, so that's helpful, but how much money are we paying Roofing Resources?
Roofing Resources gets a percentage of the cost of the project.
Okay, and how long have we been utilizing Roofing Resources?
We've been using Roofing Resources for at least 2 years that I know.
Okay.
What they do is they write specifications for the roof.
Okay.
All the insulation and all the project incidentals that they need to do so that the roof comes out like you want it to come out.
Okay. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pellegrin.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Appreciate that.
Moving on to agenda item 4A, adoption of consent agenda. Recommended motion that the Board of School Directors approve the consent agenda items. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Committee meeting action items considered routine will be enacted under one motion unless removed for separate action upon board request. Purpose of the consolidated motion is to expedite governing board action on all consent items which are not held for discussion. Items that have been held for discussion by the governing board will be enacted upon at the time that the item is discussed. This evening, I would like to remove from consent agenda under finance, number 5, agenda items A and G, financial statements and human resources report. Under agenda item number 6, I would like to remove agenda item F, G, H, and I, which are all student adjudications. Are there any additional items to be removed from consent agenda this evening? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, would you call for the vote, please?
Jennifer Schott,
Yes.
Andrew Finkbeiner,
Yes.
Rob Fisher,
Yes.
Becky Harlan,
Yes.
Holly Charest,
Yes.
Mary Ann Harris,
Yes.
Amelia Mills,
Yes.
Arvell Brown. Motion approved.
Chairman Finkbeiner will return to agenda item number 5.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Letter A, financial statements. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the financial statements, bills, payables list as presented. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote.
Becky Harlan,
Yes.
Arvell Brown, Amelia Mills,
Yes.
Mary Ann Harris,
Yes.
Rob Fisher,
Yes.
Andrew Finkbeiner,
Yes.
Jennifer Schott, Holly Charest.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Letter G, Human Resources Report. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the resignations, appointments, new positions, leave of absence, transfers, change of status, and corrections as presented. Do we have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote, please.
Holly Charest,
Yes.
Rob Fisher,
Yes.
Arvell Brown, Andrew Finkbeiner,
Yes.
Mary Ann Harris,
Yes.
Amelia Mills,
Yes.
Becky Harlan,
Yes.
Jennifer Schott.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Madam Chair, Ms. Mills, agenda items for Education Committee.
6F, proposed adjudication, student 10006283. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the proposed student adjudication for student 10006283. Motion?
Motion.
Second.
Call for the vote?
Andrew Finkbeiner,
Yes.
Mary Ann Harris,
Yes.
Arvell Brown, Becky Harlan,
Yes.
Holly Charest,
Yes.
Rob Fisher,
Yes.
Jennifer Schott,
Yes.
Amelia Mills.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Item G, proposed adjudication, student 10005775. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the proposed student adjudication for student 10005775. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Call for the vote?
Mary Ann Harris,
Yes.
Becky Harlan,
Yes.
Amelia Mills,
Yes.
Andrew Finkbeiner,
Yes.
Arvell Brown, Jennifer Schott,
Yes.
Holly Charest,
Yes.
Rob Fisher.
Yes.
Motion approved.
H, proposed adjudication, student 10007180. Recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the proposed student adjudication for student 10007180. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Call for the vote?
Becky Harlan,
Yes.
Rob Fisher,
Yes.
Andrew Finkbeiner,
Yes.
Jennifer Shaw,
Yes.
Arbel Brown, Amelia Mills,
Yes.
Holly Charest,
Yes.
Mary Ann Harris.
Yes.
Motion approved.
I, proposed adjudication student 100006022, recommended action that the Board of School Directors approve the proposed student adjudication for student 100006022. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Call for the vote.
Amelia Mills,
Yes.
Holly Charest,
Yes.
Becky Harlan,
Yes.
Mary Ann Harris,
Yes.
Jennifer Shaw,
Yes.
Rob Fisher,
Yes.
Andrew Finkbeiner,
Yes.
Arbel Brown. Motion approved.
Okay, I think that takes care of the items removed from consent agenda. We'll move on to agenda item 9A, public comment. The board has requested all persons making comments of public concern to list their name, address, telephone number, and topics on the sheet provided. There is a 3-minute time limit per person. Lori Shannon Bailey.
Thank you. This is an email I sent to you, Mr. Fisher, and the board dated December 28th. I sent this in U.S. snail mail and also email, and I wrote, "Dear President Fisher, enclosed, please find attached a resolution in support of the litigation before the Pennsylvania Commonwealth Court about the failure to properly enforce Pennsylvania's constitutional guarantee in Article 3, Section 14 of a thorough and efficient system of public education, urging the Pennsylvania General Assembly to create and maintain a fair, adequate, and predictable funding system that enables all children to meet state academic standards and does not discriminate against low-wealth school districts." I have also attached a copy of the frequently asked questions on the resolution. I am requesting the Codesville Area School District Board of Directors hold our legislators accountable by signing this resolution and sending it properly to the individuals listed at the bottom, which include the governor and local and state legislators. I enclosed a copy of the resolution, and I mentioned I enclosed also a copy of the frequently asked questions. I did email that to Ms. Mahana, all school board members. The trial is ongoing. We all know that we are in a low-wealth school district, which means that any state funding additional in terms of supporting the issues behind the funding lawsuit would certainly help our school district. I would appreciate a response sometime sooner than later. The City of Codesville is waiting on you all to respond to this resolution. They apparently will not react or respond to their ask until you all make a decision. So, thank you.
Ms. Shannon Bailey, I received your mailed copy this evening upon my arrival, and it will be addressed.
Thank you, sir.
Kathy Elliker.
Good evening, Kathy Elliker, Head of Leadership. And Kat, I would just like to say, on behalf of the Teachers Association, we want to thank the school board of directors for their continued service to our district. We do know that it is School Board Director Appreciation Month, so we want to thank you and reiterate that we may not always agree, but we appreciate your efforts and your dedication to our staff, our students, and our community. We know it's a thankless job, and we wanted to say thank you. You have our respect and our gratitude. Thank you.
Mrs. Elliker. Thank you. Informational items. Agenda item 10A, Health and Safety Plan Update and Discussion. Mr. Hanna.
Thank you, Mr. President. Folks, I'll use mine as well again. It's coming now. Once again, thank you for this. Wanted to provide the board and the public with an update on the health and safety plan. As we've said in the last number of months, it's the month of January where we need to bring this to the board for action. It won't be action for this meeting. It will be action for the following meeting. So just want to share with folks, as we've said previously, our goal is to ensure that we're all safe and that we're providing the best educational opportunity for our students, ideally in person, including the supports that are needed for our students and staff. I want to acknowledge, and if you're a nurse, would you please stand? I know we've got nurses in the crowd tonight. I want to thank you all for everything you have done during this pandemic to support the safety of our students, of our staff, of our families, and of one another. Because I know you guys are constantly speaking not only with the Chester County Health Department, but with one another. So can we give them a round of applause? Thank you very much. I know you did sign up to be a nurse, but you didn't sign up for this pandemic, right? So I want to thank you. They've been leading the way, as have been our school leaders, leading the way, our staffs in buildings to support our students throughout this pandemic. And they've been, as I said, in constant touch with each other and with the Chester County Health Department to ensure that the policies, that the guidance is being provided, which is ever changing. Raise your hand if it changed today, right? I mean, it's not a matter of if, it's when. And so one of the things we'd like to share is that we know that CHOP, the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and the Chester County Health Department have provided additional guidance, which the Chester County Health Department is referring to as a tool, right? The CDC has provided the actual guidance. The Chester County Health Department is providing their follow-up as a tool. And frankly, we're seeing much more community spread. In fact, the conversation in the world out there now is that we're moving from a pandemic to an endemic, which means that it's not going away, it's something that we're going to end up having to live with. And frankly, both institutions, including the CDC, is recommending that we do everything possible to maintain in-person instruction. And they're trying to make everything happen so that we can do that. We'll give you some examples of that as we move forward. Contact tracing is one of them. And here, the guidance is, in fact, that we could, should we choose to do so, discontinue contact tracing in classrooms. And one of the reasons for that they're mentioning this is because we see classrooms as more of a controlled setting. You know how many students should be there, put your mask on, sort of a bubble as it were. So in that case, that's something that we might opt to do. And in this recommendation, we're actually recommending that we do that. And in part because there's so many more cases now that contact tracing is just absolutely has been very problematic, and it just is. There are moments where we wonder, like, are we getting it right? So buses and things of this sort. The second bullet speaks to congregate settings. That while we might say, okay, in classrooms we're gonna ratchet it back, right? But in these congregate settings, buses, cafeterias, sports teams, places like that, we want to sort of fix our attention there to be sure that we're doing that where we know that there's a higher risk of transmission. So the guidance is focus your attention there, right? As opposed to focusing on classrooms. That's a determination we need to make at this point. That's something that we would look to support as we move forward. Relative to quarantine, the most recent guidance speaks to going from 10 days, right, or frankly the shortened quarantine, previously 7 days, to 5 days, and in some cases 10 days as well. And so here we can see what we're talking about with regard to unvaccinated and unboosted individuals who've been identified as a close contact to a COVID case. And what would that look like? And now they should quarantine for a period of 5 days, as we're aware, from the last date of exposure. If they remain asymptomatic throughout the 5 days, they can return on day 6. So if you've been exposed, you don't have any symptoms, you can come back on day 6. Ideally, we'd love you to be tested. But if you've been to a pharmacy recently and try to find a test, good luck, right? They're just not out there. So hence, on day 6, a return with a well-fitting mask for the next 5 days. Not an issue with us, because our goal is our plan right now is universal masking. No need to quarantine after COVID exposure for the following. If the student is 18 or older and has received all the recommended vaccine doses, including boosters or additional primary shots for some immunocompromised folks, people 5 to 17 years of age, and has completed the primary series of the COVID-19 vaccines, or if the student or staff has a confirmed has had a confirmed case within the last 90 days that is tested positive using a viral test. On the isolation side, someone who tests positive for COVID is required to stay home and isolate for a 5-day period from their symptom onset or testing if they are asymptomatic. After the 5-day isolation, if they're asymptomatic or their symptoms are resolving without a fever for 24 hours, they can return to school on day 6. Upon return, again, as we said earlier, they must wear a well-fitting mask. One of the, and it's not here, but one of the guidance points as well speaks to if there's a COVID case in your household, right? And if you've been exposed, that your quarantine may in fact be more than 5 days, because you've got to wait until that family member's 5 days is up, and then your 5 days would begin. I know it's very much in the weeds. I know the nurses are aware of that, but this is what's made this much more difficult than previously, right? Where it just used to be 10 days and you're back. Now there's a lot more there that we have to be mindful of. On the reporting side, there was a moment where we were reporting, everything on a daily basis and things of this sort. Now the Chester County Health Department is looking for us to report on a bi-weekly basis on a list that we will send to them. Certainly, any questions we have around cases, we continue to reach out to them to be sure that we're providing the right guidance. And again, any staff or student we've been seeing who has tested positive for COVID needs to let us know, or is a probable case, needs to let us know so that we can give you the necessary guidance to so that you can do the right thing. Relative to testing, if you're able to find the testing, you've probably seen the term EUA testing, which is Emergency Youth Authorization testing. We will accept those as part of returning. We've been recommended that that's something we should do. And again, I see Mr. Smith here. We're going to continue to partner. We've been partnering with Woodland Pharmacy. We look forward to continuing to do that to provide opportunities for students to be vaccinated. What do the data say? You can see that over the last 4 weeks, I'm sorry, we are in a high level of transmission, and we've been in a high level of transmission for a while. In fact, Ms. Diefendorfer and I, as we were preparing today, I reminded her that the last time I did this presentation for August 24th, our incidence rate was in the 80s. In the 80s. We're at 1,162 incidence rate per 100,000 and a 28% positivity. In fact, the data we got this morning is it's actually ticked up. And so you can see what that's looked like. Week 1 is the most recent. Right, week 2, week 3, week 4. Those are weeks previous. And again, this is data that came to us from the Chester County Health Department, and this is data as of January 7th to 2022. Here in the district, we see that we're actually slightly higher than other counties. You can see what our positive test counts are this past week, which is again reported on the 7th, and where we are with regard to the incidence rate. We are very much in the high area. Here we are with vaccination rates as of January 7th. We can see that across the board, ages 5 and up, at least one shot in Chester County, one vaccine. We're at 83%, and that number you can see was young people who are 5 to 9 at 42% with at least one vaccination. 10 to 14, 56%, and 15 to 19 at 78%. And so this is what we're looking at in terms of the vaccination rates. And over the last 4 days, as you know, we tally these, and these are what's reported to us here in the district. During the past 14 days, we've seen 39 positive or probable cases. Once again, that's what's been reported to the district. Last time I think we checked 2 weeks ago, we were 32 cases. So we're seeing an increase, and that's where we are with regard to that. So our administrative recommendation will be at this point is to follow masking guidelines. I'll share with you what that looks like in the next slide. that will be dependent on transmission levels. We're continuing to follow the federal mandate with regard to wearing masks on buses, and we will continue to review transmission rates and make recommendations to alter this, to edit this plan as we would need to. And here's what we would be looking at, like in terms of masking guidelines. And this is actually back in August what we thought about bringing forward prior to the state mandate for universal masking. So when we're in low, right, and that is a 7-day incidence rate per 100,000 of 10 or less, right, and a 7-day positivity percent positivity rate of 5 or less, we'd have mask option, right, across the board, right, though masks mandatory on buses. If we were in moderate, we would be looking at a 7-day incidence rate anywhere between 10 and 49, right, and that we would say masks required when indoors for K through 6, in part because of the vaccination rate that's very low still, right? And so that's a piece that's important to us. And masks recommended at 7 to 12 because you see a higher vaccination rate in those young people, and certainly masks required on buses. In the substantial and high rate, we're calling for pretty much the same recommendations we are now, which is where we would be masks required in school buildings and buses. And and you can see here substantial is anything 50 and above and 100 and above. And given where we are at about 1,100 or 1,200 in Chester County, 1,400 per incidence rate, and almost a 25 to 30% of the positivity rate. Basically, what this is calling for is that everyone, irrespective of their vaccination status, would remain masked until such time we start to see numbers like this. What's the outlook? As we engaged twice a week as superintendents in the county, we have had an opportunity to speak with Dr. Rubin, who's from CHOP, as well as Gene Franklin from the Chester County Health Department. And what the hope is that we're going to begin to see toward the end of the month into February, sort of a decline in what these numbers look like. If I go back and you can see what the data looked like, in Codesville, in Codesville a month ago, we were about 500, right, per 100,000. And you can see it pretty much tripled in a month. And so the question then becomes, will it go down that quickly? We don't know. And if it did, we'd still be at 500, nowhere near the 100 yet. So we'd still be masking up and taking a look at what the data say as it relates to that. So this is where we are in terms of an update. There's nothing to vote on this evening. Looking forward to any feedback, any questions that we might have and be able to answer over the next 2 weeks before we bring to the board and to the public what our recommendation would be.
So at this point, I'd like to open the floor for any comments, any questions, any possible discussion.
Mr. Ant, quick question for you. I just want to make sure I read the slide correctly. For close contacting, the health and safety plan is stating that if the child is unvaccinated, they're required to isolate for 5 days. If the child is vaccinated, there is no isolation required. Did I read that correctly?
I'm sorry.
Yep. If a child is vaccinated, there is no isolation requirement for close contact. So if the student is in close contact, they're vaccinated, they do not need to quarantine.
That's how I understand.
We'll use quarantine. I like quarantine better than isolate. Isolate just seems like
we're not our nurses to be sure I'm getting you right, but that is correct.
And if the child is unvaccinated, they're required to quarantine for 5 days. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
And is that on the basis that if somebody is vaccinated, that their viral load is low enough that it is not transmissible? I just want to make sure that if that's the case, and we're not requiring a positive test, that we're not putting our staff and other students at risk. For children who are vaccinated, they can still get sick from COVID, right? It's my understanding that I see the data that goes out that it's vaccinated and unvaccinated, just less severe. I just want to make sure that we're not putting our staff and our students at risk by not forcing all children that are close contact to quarantine. I'm not making that suggestion, I'm just asking the question.
Understood.
Right, that's, if I'm vaccinated and I have COVID, I can give it to somebody else, whether they're vaccinated or not. Right. And I'll make the statement that My biggest concern throughout this entire health and safety plan and with the pandemic and where we're moving forward is it has been shown that masks do help to mitigate the spread, right? It's in my opinion, there's no disputing that, but my biggest concern is the impact on the education of our students when they have to quarantine. And that's why I said I'm not making the recommendation that a close contact has to quarantine, vaccinated or not. I just want to make sure I understand it correctly, because there is an impact on the education for some of those students based on a close contact, even though they may not test positive. And as I'm sure you and your staff see on a regular basis, a lot of people that get close contact. So I just want to make sure I understand that correctly, and have we given consideration to make any adjustments to that to try and cut down on the amount of loss of education in person for some of these kids.
I mean, we're following the recommendations of the CDC through the health department, and we've been very confident of what they've shared with us. I will say to you that with this, and it's probably not new news, but with this variant, the 5 days is important because it's during the first 3 days that you see most of the most of the transmission. So being back on day 6, you've given it the time to sort of work its way through. I want to be sure that with I want to be sure we're on the same page. I'm looking at my health professionals to be sure that we're in the same space.
Mr. Hatta, if I could.
Sure, Mrs. Shah.
CDC guidelines currently are fully vaccinated individuals, even after a known positive exposure, do not need to quarantine. They need to mask.
Right.
As long as masks are used correctly, and preferably surgical masks or N95s or KN95s, they greatly reduce the spread. So, from my opinion, I would say that what Mr. Haddon has put together and put up here, saying that students who are vaccinated even after a known exposure do not need to quarantine. The key to that is that the students keep the masks on at all times.
That's on the isolation side. That's what when you come back, that after the 5 days post, and in our district again, we are mask universal.
Sure.
I will say, and we need help from families and so forth. That have I seen young people as I'm walking halls here and got to tell them mask up? I have. Have I seen young people get off a bus and be handed a mask? I've handed masks out to young people. So that is an issue. It's not the preponderance, 90% of the students, but it's an area that we've got to get better. I know the principals are working really hard to try to make that point. So thank you, Ms. Shah, for that. I appreciate it.
Yep. My concern, thank you, Mr. Anna. My concern isn't necessarily on the positive test. I think that's pretty clear, cut and dry. My focus is on have we given consideration to using that same rationale that you just alluded to and Ms. Shah alluded to as well, that if a child, regardless of vaccination status, if a child is close contact, that we're not going to require them to quarantine as long as masking is worn in a manner in which it's required, right? Just to make sure that, and I guess it's a question, Mr. Anna. Have we given consideration to, if you were a close contact, because according to what you presented today, if you are vaccinated, you don't need to quarantine. If you are not vaccinated, you have to quarantine. So have we given thought to, as long as close quarantine, so your close contact, regardless of your vaccination status, it apply to all. All students can report back into class unless you are symptomatic, and again, precluded by being asymptomatic, as long as masks are worn properly. Again, I'm looking at the loss of education for these kids that have to repeatedly, there's some situations our children are put in that they have no choice in the matter, right? And they're thrust into positions where they may be repetitively in close contact. Right?
So in that case, to be honest, in that case, we were looking to follow the guidelines. We did not give thought to that part. Like if you are unvaccinated, okay, keep your mask on and stay. Right? That is something that we've not thought we'll give it the next thought over the next couple of weeks and see what it looks like. But as it stands right now, the recommendation would be that they would have to quarantine. Okay, that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, I would ask if when you do have your meetings and before this does come to the board for a formalized vote, if we could at least start to be some discussion about considerations for that, just again, to marginalize, not putting people's health and safety in jeopardy, but making sure that we're finding that balance between what is and is not considered quarantining and who can.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Mr. Hanna?
Yes.
I think it's slide 6. I just want clarification on something that was said. Okay. So under there is no need to quarantine after a COVID exposure if the student is on point 3. If the student staff had a confirmed COVID-19 within the last 90 days, tested positive using a test, viral test. So that means that whether they're vaccinated or unvaccinated, if they had COVID within the last 90 days, there is no need to quarantine, correct?
That's what this says, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask about the availability of tests for kids in schools?
Test kits.
Yeah, so we know that test kits have been, we've been using the antigen testing. Mr. Smith, we still have, but I know that we've been running short.
Yeah, right now we're down to our final blocks. I did reach out to the health department, and they are looking to do this, the new allocation of antigen testing kits. But they have a very limited supply, so they're waiting for back to shop in the next shifts.
And we were not doing assurance tests. We were just testing those students who were and adults who were symptomatic, right? Which is now the recommendation, right? The recommendation is test those who were symptomatic to see what that looks like. But yes, we have been looking at that, and also been thinking about the test to stay program, and other school districts have been doing the test to stay program, and they're out of tests. And so we just know that's an issue. Hence the push to vaccine, right? And what we might be able to do as an organization continue doing that.
Mr. Hanna, real quick question. I'm sorry, that brought up a really good point. For those staff members that have made the decision not to get vaccinated, I know that in other schools, within Chester County, that there's a requirement that they have to receive weekly testing, just to make sure that it's randomized testing. They go once a week, they go get tested, negative, then they're good to go for the week. As Mr. Smith alluded to, that there is a shortage in tests within our district. I'm assuming that the district is following that same policy, that if a staff member is unvaccinated, they are required to submit a weekly negative test. Is that correct?
We've not done that.
Okay. Okay. That answers my question then. I didn't have to ask it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Hanna.
Thank you.
There are a litany of other informational items, all of which appeared in the policy committee, so unless any of my colleagues have any additional questions or comments on those, we'll move forward. Seeing none, looking for a motion for adjournment, please.
Motion.
Second.
We will adjourn at 8:29.